This entitled mom literally wants her daughter dead.
You're under arrest.
But there's no way the rest of the family is going to let that happen. Happy birthday if today's your birthday, and on with the show. I've posted a few stories about things my entitled mother has done, and why I no longer speak to her, and I've had some people say I should give her a second chance. Here's a list of the reasons why that will never happen. It's in sections so it's easier for you to read. My sister will be referred to as Sis. Played favorites, and destroying my belongings at age 6. I first noticed my mother playing favorites, my younger sister who's 3 years younger than me, when I was 6 years old, Christmas 1996. My sister got all the big presents, and I got a few cheap bracelets and an ornament. My dad bought us rollerblades for Christmas that year, and the next day, we were outside trying them out. My sister, 3 at the time, fell over and hit her head and began crying. My mother came out of the house and began screaming at me, assuming I pushed her, which I didn't. She wasn't hearing it though, and sent me to my room. A few minutes later, she came into my room in a rage and smashed all of my belongings, including my Christmas presents. Half an hour later, she came in and said, her words exactly, "Your room's a freaking pigsty, clean it up now." When I asked her about it the next day, she claimed to not know what I was talking about. She wouldn't call an ambulance when I fell off a horse, but called one when the same thing happened to my sister. I was about 13 when this happened. My mum and my sister were really into riding horses, but I never was. But I was so desperate for my mum's approval that I started going to pony club with them. One day my horse got spooked by something and bucked me off. He was a really big horse. I almost landed on top of a barbed wire fence and was knocked out for a few minutes. I woke to my mother screaming at me, saying, "What the bloody effing heck do you think you're doing, to stupid?" She didn't even help me up. A few months later, the same thing happened to my sister, but this time my mother freaked out and came into the house screaming at me to get off my useless butt and help my sister while mum called an ambulance. My sister wasn't hurt. She'd fallen off a small horse onto a pile of dirt, but she was milking the attention for everything it was worth. She was taken to the hospital and didn't go to school for the rest of the week. Takes down my door because it made a noise when I closed it. When I was 12, I lost the privilege of having a bedroom door. The latch wouldn't click shut unless you gave it a harder push, and it would swing open if it wasn't clicked shut. My mum refused to fix it. One day when I was closing the door so I could change clothes, it made a little too much noise for my mother's liking. She burst into my door screaming at me to shut the door up. She then took out the hinges and took it away. From 12 until 14, I had no bedroom door and no privacy to change my clothes or sleep with the door closed. My sister and her friend broke into the school, but it was somehow my fault. This happened when I was 13. It was during school holidays, and my sister and her BFF broke into the school and wrote out merit awards to each other, which was obviously a stupid idea and is how they were caught. After this happened, I got the feeling that my mum was angry at me for what they'd done. This was confirmed many years later. The next story is a continuation to this. Admitted to my friend's mum how much she hated me. I always knew that my mum didn't like me, but the most I was ever told was that I was an accident and that she regretted having me. But I heard from my mum's best friend a few years ago exactly what my mum thought of me. My friend was over for a sleepover one weekend, and my mum was talking to my friend's mum. These are some of the things my mum said. "I just can't believe that Sis would do something like that. It's more of what OP would do. I'd never done anything that would give her that idea. I don't know why anyone would be friends with OP. If I were in school, I wouldn't be friends with her. Destroyed my belongings because she couldn't find the broom." This happened one summer weekend day when I was 13. My mum burst into my room and demanded to know where the broom was. I said I didn't know, and I hadn't been outside all day. She accused me of hiding the broom and began throwing my belongings at me. In fear of my life, I ran out of the house and ran to the police station at the other end of town. This was in 2003 and I didn't own a mobile phone. When we got back to the house and the police asked her what happened, she put on her sweet and innocent face and said, "I don't know what she's talking about. She must be on her period or something." The policeman believed her and wouldn't hear my side of the story, and he left. Wanted to turn off the life support when I was in a coma. When I was 17, New Year's Eve, 2007, I suffered a spinal cord injury and brain injury after falling off a roof. I was placed under an induced coma. My dad was with me the whole time, but it took my mum 3 weeks to come, even though her partner at the time could have paid to get there sooner. All she knew was that I'd had an accident and was in a coma. She came with things to bury me with. My parents were given the option to turn the life support off. My dad said no, having faith that I'd pull through, but my mum said yes and threw a tantrum when she didn't get her wish. So instead of burying me with what she brought, they were placed on my bed while I was in a coma. Rehabilitation was hard and traumatic, so I don't like talking about it, so I'll skip to the next thing. Threw a tantrum after my dad told me. While I was in rehab after my injury, my dad let it slip that my mum wanted to turn the life support off on me. Up until this point, I didn't know this. I called my mum and told her I never want to see her again, and that if I'm dead to her, then she's dead to me. Tried to steal money from her kids after our dad dies. In 2009, my dad and my uncle, his brother, died in a plane crash. I was 19, my sister 16, and my brother 22. My mother was there the next day to offer her support, but nobody wanted them there. My entire family despises her. She started asking questions about the will and his assets, information we didn't give her. We didn't know the cause of death for 3 weeks after his death, and lo and behold, she got nothing. The will was written before my parents had even met. The will gave everything to my dad's siblings, and they gave it all to me and my siblings, so long as we promised that our mother got nothing. She's tried a few times in the past few years to get money from us, but we won't talk to her. I haven't spoken to my mother in about 7 years, and I don't ever plan on seeing her again. She's a toxic person, and life is better without her. My brother still talks to her from time to time, but me, my sister, and the rest of my family want nothing to do with her, and me and my sister are really close. She's not entitled, and I hold no resentment towards her. I love her to bits. Well, if anyone had any questions as to why she shouldn't give her a second chance, I think that it's now become quite clear to all of us. I mean, she literally wants her dead. That's not really someone you can just have a friendly chat to afterwards. Not unless a miracle of God himself changing that person's heart. Our cast for the story: me, ES, my insane ex-stepmom; Sis, my little sis; Dad, me and Sis's dad; Desk Lady has a brief appearance; and Sis's grandma also has a brief appearance and some relevance. Our story. This took place a few years after the fated trip to England and France with the Huckleberries, if you read that story. Thankfully, I never did see them again, but oh was I in for a bright future of Karens and crazies, if there's even a difference. For some backstory, my sisters had a different mum than me. She was this bitter Hawaiian lady who hated me from the very moment she met me, simply because I wasn't her kid. She married my dad when I was about 4 or 5, and they had my 2 little sisters over the course of the early 2000s. I wasn't raised by my biological parents for undisclosed issues, and my biological mum isn't in my life at all. I thought I finally had a good mum figure in my life, but oh was I wrong. Throughout our childhood, she constantly tried to get me in trouble with my dad for ridiculous things, like me playfully teasing my sisters, like siblings always do. But ES would twist it and tell my dad that I was bullying them. She would even go off at him with crazy things like, "How dare you give OP all your attention? Pay some attention to our kids." I only got to see my dad 2 or 3 times a year at that point, so of course he was going to shower me with attention the few times he got to see me, and he simply responded with, "I get to see our kids every day. I only get to see OP maybe twice a year." Skip to present day. ES and my dad have been divorced for many years at this point, for obvious reasons. This lady is nuts. I was in my 2nd year of college, uni for the British EU readers, and every other weekend I would go spend with my dad. My littlest sister's award ceremony was taking place this weekend. I was happy for her. She was on the all A's and B's honor roll, better than I did in school. Sis told me that her mum had taken the day off work to attend her award ceremony, along with her maternal grandparents. I had never been to her school before, and I didn't know where to go or what to look for, and traveled 2 hours from home to attend the ceremony. To this day, I don't remember why the grandparents ended up not coming. I didn't like ES one bit for obvious reasons, but I wanted to prove to her I was above all her petty crap and act civil, unlike she did to my dad. dad. She'd taken a restraining order out on him for no reason. I finally found the gym where the ceremony was to take place after wandering around the school for half an hour, and looked around the packed bleachers for ES. She's nowhere to be seen, nor are the grandparents. I sit down and watch the ceremony, cheering loudly for Sis and taking photos as she stands proud in front of the bleachers with her classmates, holding her honor roll certificate. The big smile on her face made my day, and I wanted to take her out for a celebratory lunch at the popular Southern chicken sandwich chain. If you live in the South, you know which place. The one that's closed on Sunday and has the waffle fries. After the conclusion of the ceremony, I waded through the crowd of middle schoolers and parents leaving the gym, trying to find Sis, which wasn't too hard. I hugged and congratulated her, and we both looked around for her family. I didn't see Mum at all. Did you happen to see her when you sat down? Nope. I'd know her face if I saw it. Both of us looked around but didn't see her. Meanwhile, all the other students were beginning to leave and head home with their parents. The school year was officially over. I think to myself, if Sis's mum isn't here to pick her up, she'll just be left here alone. So I decided to take her myself. Big mistake in the end. We headed to the front desk and I asked the lady if it was okay to take Sis, showing her my ID. You'll have to call her mother or anyone else on her visitors list and ask their permission. We can't just let you take her. Her mother and grandparents are on our list, so if you'd like me to call one of them and sort it out, that will be fine. Fair enough. So Sis calls her mum. No answer. She called her mum nearly 10 times, and her calls weren't answered. So instead, Sis decided to call her grandparents. And after a few tries, the grandmother picks up and says it's okay for me to take Sis out for lunch and then bring her home. It was then the desk lady let me take my sister. The grandmother had said that she would inform ES that I was bringing Sis home, and not to worry. All was well. I took her to the chicken sandwich place, and we were having a great time. Until my dad calls. Where are you? ES just called me in a panic. She claims you took Sis and she's calling the police. You need to take her home right now. You know how ES is. You don't want to start trouble with her. Sis was in tears at this point, almost shaking with anger. She's my sister, and where even was my mum? I didn't see her at all, and she wasn't even here to pick me up. I'm panicked myself. I didn't want to be arrested because I hadn't done anything wrong. I was also angry because at this point both me and Sis knew that her mum hadn't attended the ceremony, nor had her grandparents. We quickly threw away the rest of our food, and I start to drive Sis back to her mum's house. It's about a 30-minute drive, and I hoped the driveway wouldn't be filled with police cars when I arrived. When I pulled up in the driveway, ES immediately came stomping out in her pajamas. It was clear now that this woman hadn't even planned on going to her own daughter's awards ceremony. She angrily tapped on my window and, upholding my standards to not be petty, rolled it down to take on her wrath. How dare you take my daughter without permission? I was worried sick about her. You've always been a bad kid, and who knows what you would have done with her. I called the police and they're on their way. You took the day off to come to my awards ceremony and you didn't even come. You told me you did, and that was the entire reason you're off work today. Nobody came to support me except for OP. She was the only one there for me, and I would have been left there all by myself if she hadn't taken me home. What were you even doing that was so much more important than coming to your own kid's awards ceremony? Sis is still sobbing. She didn't want me to get arrested. ES scoffed, her raging eyes still locked on me, but her excuses were as petty as ever, her standard. I was sleeping. I work all week to put food on the table for you kids, and I deserved a rest. I was angry, but I knew arguing with this woman would get me nowhere. She's petty, she's cold, and she's mean. She works all day as a manager at some place that rhymes with Crapper Barrel, and is never home to spend time with her two daughters, even treating her employees more like her kids than her actual kids. The least she could have done was show up to an hour-long awards ceremony. She still would have all day to sleep afterwards. Sis, get out of the car and go inside. Don't you ever talk back to me or you'll be grounded. ES turns back to me as Sis opens the door and begins to slump limp up the driveway and into the house, still crying. I'm still silent, as I tend to freeze up when put on the spot, like a deer in headlights. My plans of being above her pettiness were crumbling, as I was clearly shrinking in the face of adversity. Now you, get off my property and I'll let you go this one time, but I don't ever want my children in your car again. You're a bad seed. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I knew this crazy woman was serious. I managed to get one shaky sentence out. Sis tried to call you multiple times and you wouldn't pick up. So she called your mother and she said it was okay to go ahead and take Sis out to lunch and then bring her home. I didn't pick up because I was asleep, and you take after your awful father. Of course I don't want my kids in the car with you. My mother did call and tell me, and that gave me the reason to call the cops. You could have been kidnapping my baby. Yeah, like I would kidnap my own sister? Where would I even go? Now go, before I change my mind and get the cops after you. She crosses her arms in a huff and kicks at the wheel of my car. I peel out of there as fast as I can and don't look back. I got an earful from my dad about not messing with this crazy woman, and that was that. And that's the story of how my crazy ex-stepmom nearly had me arrested for kidnapping my own sister. Sorry, no happy ending. The only joy I got was never seeing her again. Though a couple of years later now, Sis has said her mum has begun to get better. I don't get how you could tell your own kid that you're taking the day off so you can see the award ceremony, and then you just sleep the whole day and act like as if it's not a thing. I mean, who did she think was going to bring her home from the ceremony? If it was a 30-minute drive, there's no way that she could walk home by herself. I mean, maybe she could catch a bus. She should be thanking the sister that she was there for her for moral support and then was able to drive her home. I mean, at the very least, it saved her an hour-long trip. Submit your story to be read on the channel at VoiceyHereStories@gmail.com and join our Voicey veteran community at r/VoiceyHere. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. Alright, Voicey veterans, I'll see you in the next one.